Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. I hope you're all enjoying this fabulous event we've put on for you. I'm Marcus McDowell. I'm a contributor at Color in Tech, the organization that puts on Black Tech Fest. Today, we're here to talk about how to build a future-proof organization. We have a wonderful panel of individuals here, and I'll allow them to each introduce themselves from my left on down.
Hi, so I am Mactuno Soot. I'm the Global People Director for the IT division of WPP, which is the world's largest advertising company. I have a background in management consulting and business transformation, so this is a topic close to my heart.
Pleasure. I'm Jay Grant. I'm the Chief Legal Officer of The Trade Desk. That's an independent demand-side platform. Essentially, we help people buy advertising effectively digitally in an omni-channel manner. Very excited about this topic and learning to look more and want to hear it.
Excellent. Hi everyone, my name's Foley Ogundeli. I'm VP Head of Commercial at a company called Wise, formerly known as TransferWise. For those who are less familiar, we basically move money around the world in the fastest, most convenient and hopefully low-cost way possible. I have a background in tech. Prior to Wise, I was at Stripe, leading a lot of our go-to-market and commercial businesses. So fintech is near and dear to my heart, as is events like this, and it's great to see so many of you in the audience braving the rain early in the morning on a Thursday. So excited for this panel, excited for this event.
Well, what a very esteemed panel, Bill. Lucky last. So I'm Ranil Batejo. I'm the Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Lloyds Banking Group. So I think most people know Lloyds is one of the UK's largest banks. With my role, I'm really leading how we deploy data, machine learning, and AI. So very, very interested in how we build a talent pool and future-proof ourselves so that we can really start to use these technologies. So very excited to hear from my fellow panelists and also take any questions during the course of this. So yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great to hear from you guys. Very excited. I'm sure everyone here is very interested in this conversation throughout levels of organization to understand how to navigate where we're going with the future. So I'm going to jump right into our questions we have here today. So I'll start from my left down. How can organizations future-proof themselves in a rapidly changing technological landscape?
So a couple of things it's a big question, but I'll focus on a few things. So I think for me, the first thing is what is companies being able to understand what is our business strategy and how do we leverage technology to achieve that. And so for me, I think future-proofing your organization is constantly scanning and strategic forecasting around what does the technology landscape look like, what are some of the new technologies that we can integrate into our operating model to deliver value to our customers. So for me, it's partly a posture of senior leadership, constantly scanning and understanding how you can leverage technologies to deliver on your strategy. I think the big thing for me is talent as well. So probably lots of people are in this space, but as a leader, I'm often in a situation where we need to build out a new capability, but actually to try and find those skills is quite difficult. And so what we're often trying to do is look forward 2-3 years. What are the hot skills in the market? How can we either build those skills by bringing in early careers talent or building our people, or where can we find those skills in plentiful supply? Because otherwise you can easily find yourself in a situation where you've got your strategy, you know the technologies you want to leverage, but you struggle to find the talent or you're paying a very high premium for it. So for me, it's about strategic forecasting and planning. But I don't know about this panel, but as leaders, sometimes finding time to look up away from the weeds of the day-to-day and plan for the future is the most important thing. So I think it's a posture and a mentality. That would be my answer to that.
No, I'd have to agree with that. I think the challenge is it means so many things to different people. In the ad tech space right now, we deal with a rapid changing environment in terms of deprecation of third-party cookies and how do we deal with that technology. At the Trade Desk, we've developed and supported in our community a very popular technology, UID2, to help in a privacy-safe manner effectively access first-party data and maximize the value of it. But that's specific to us. I think you have to step back from three vectors, really. You have to look at the people, you have to look at the tools, and you have to look at the environment you're creating. If you're looking at the future, who are the people that are going to do best in the future? At our company, we tend to focus on what values do people have. Do they have vision? Do they have agility? Do they have grit? Are they generous with their time? Are they full-hearted? Do they have openness? Because those are people that are actually maintaining a growth mindset, and that's probably the biggest asset you can have in trying to future-proof an organization. If you have people that are in a steady state versus a growth mindset, you're going to have a challenge. Those that have a growth mindset and those that have a purpose are ready to meet that technology where it is, and it'll probably be the greatest thing for future-proofing your organization. If I were future-proofing our panel right now, I would say, why are there 4, 5 men on this panel? Why aren't there women? Do I have enough in terms of different viewpoints here for that moment? And then I think on the second point was tools. I think for each of us, we have different technology that we focus on. We obviously spend a lot of time in the AI area, and so it may be specific for the ad tech industry in terms of how we approach it, but you look at those tools next. And then the third is really the environment. Are you allowing those future-proofed individuals with that growth mindset in an environment where their ideas are going to help be accretive to your organization? So until you think about it from the aspect of what are the tools I have, what are the people that I have are executing, and do I put them in the environment for success, you're not really future-proofing your organization. But that's where I would focus my time.
Great. I guess I'll build on Jay's response as well. I guess you're alluding to a lot of the company culture. I think for us as a high-growth company, started 10, 11 years ago and kind of grown to the size that we have, it's important to think about that test and iterate culture. Like, it's okay to fail fast, take those learnings, and take those learnings to the next point in which, hey, it's okay to fail again, and keep learning and keep going through that process. And guess what? That learning helps you get better. So about future-proofing, really it is being able to say, okay, we might not get it right first time, but let's put the plan in place to make those incremental improvements. The second piece I'll add, just to be brief, is the innovation and the future-proofing doesn't always need to come from your organization. It can come from partners and partnerships that you engage in. I lead a part of the business called Wise Platform, which is basically taking all of the infrastructure that Wise has built, so the ability to move money globally so fast and so at such a low cost, and we package that and we actually provide that to banks and large enterprises and large fintechs. Because for a legacy bank who's existed for some of them literally centuries, it's hard for them to push the envelope on innovation. So they'll look at a partner like a Wise, say, hey, you built this fantastic product. How can we learn from you? And also for us, how can we learn from them? How do you build such a sustainable business that has dominance in the way it does? So future-proofing doesn't always need to come internally. It can also come from the partnerships that you gain as well.
Some fantastic answers there from my fellow panelists. So I just want to build on them. So I'm from Lloyds Banking Group. We are literally one of the centuries-old banks. It's about 350 years old. And we've had to go through lots of fairly significant evolutions. And the one that we're in right now is very much about a business that used to think of itself as a bank. Now we think of ourselves as a tech company that sells products and services to customers. So very, very sort of much more tech focused. So in the context of that, we are doing a lot of work to really understand what does our current kind of workforce look like? What are the skills that colleagues have by job family? We've mapped everyone. We've tried to understand what skills do they have today, what skills do they need to have in the future. And what we're trying to do is to really ensure that everyone has the opportunity to learn and upskill. So, for example, we have in my space, I lead data and analytics, and there is just never going to be enough graduates in the UK for us to hire to service that need. So what we've started to do is recognize that and really invest in programs like apprenticeships, where effectively we can retrain colleagues, so we can retrain people that have worked in a contact center or a marketing team who want to learn about machine learning and AI, and there's paths in, and it's proving to be very successful in that we're getting people with much broader skill sets. Clearly they have the aptitude because they've self-selected to join these programs, but it also means that we have a much more diverse workforce as well, and particularly around things like ethnicity and gender, right? So I think our panel is an example of how this hasn't been happening over the last decades. The second thing we're doing also is, so linked to that is really investing in the talent pipeline. So over the last few years, we've just put a lot more effort on apprenticeship programs, graduate programs, but also early careers. So, again, in tech and data, it is not very diverse, right? So there's a huge skew towards, males. There's just not enough gender diversity. There's not enough ethnic diversity. So how we've started to address that is getting involved much earlier on. And so it's a bit of a long-term investment. So we, for example, now work a lot with T-level students. So this is people still at high school, give them a whole range of industrial placements. We do a lot of work with people doing their A-levels and trying to encourage them into tech and data. And we've really started to broaden areas like industrial placements. So the view is, we're a major part of the UK economy. If we start to invest in these skills and also talent pipelines, we may not get a payback immediately, but it will start to benefit us effectively. So to summarize, it's really about understanding the skills, giving colleagues kind of the learning pathways, but then also putting a lot more effort on investing in much more longer-term talent pipelines.
Fabulous answers. Thank you for bringing up the gender divide. I think that's a very great way in which we can be allies and also accomplices in how to address the infrastructure and make sure that we have greater forms of also gender diversity. I have a question for you here too on how organizations can ensure they're continuously learning and evolving to stay relevant in the future.
And actually, to build on Ranil's point, I think learning pathways are critical. So increasingly, we're kind of similar in our organization where we're saying, okay, so if an individual is in a role, what is the technology learning pathways that are critical to them developing? So in our area, we look at, for example, at the moment, cloud, Gen AI. Those are skills that we want all of our people to be upskilled in. But then you look at niche areas where you say, well, actually, in your particular technology area, what are the skills that you need for the future? So that would be one thing, is really, really clear learning pathways. But the other thing for me is about culture of learning. So often in organizations, people don't take time to learn. They're just head down doing. And so you can have all the right learning platforms, learning interventions. You can give people as much direction as possible. But the reality is, if you don't have a culture where your senior leaders and your managers are prioritizing learning, tying it to people's progression and development, people will not pick up those skills. So the culture of learning for me is critical. It's something that we're trying to fix and address at the moment within our culture. Is how do you create, for example, an hour a week where everybody knows that that's the time when you learn? How do you make sure that leaders are role modeling, accepting where they have gaps and showing that vulnerability and picking up those skills? So learning culture for me is key, as well as Ranil's point around learning pathways. That's what I'd probably say.
+1, culture of learning, amazing. The reality is that people think about learning as their own personal experience, but I think you have to think about it as both an external and an internal tool. So internal, obviously, we're creating pathways for people to learn a great variety of information and aspects of what we do specifically, but just as important, precisely because we are in a relatively esoteric area of tech, is we spend a lot of time educating legacy media companies, people that are actually afraid of what will the future look like when everything is in fact programmatic advertising as they see it today. And so there's a lot of education in terms of what can that future look like and what is the pathway from the current time to forward. So that's external and internal. And then I think you have to think about what are the programs that you're providing. We have specific programs that are both for our employees that deal with a program called Training Edge, which trains us specifically on the things that we do as a product. But then I think you have to think about how do you train others in terms of innovation with ideas that they perhaps will view as first impression. And to do so, I think you indicated, Foley, in a manner that's okay to fail fast or to take that risk. And inherent in that has to be the acceptance that the outcome of this is innovation. It's not failure. So, for example, in our own company, we have a recent release called Kokai. It's an iterative process by which we are developing product. So it's not just product, but it's actually thinking about constantly evolving the product and learning in a dynamic way that develops a better product. So if you view it as a path towards innovation, and not a path towards a zero-sum gain of knowledge, then I think that imbues your culture of learning with a freedom to fail. So.
Hello? Come on. Completely agree. I'd be, first of all, +2 to the learning culture. That for us at WISE is hugely important. If you're working at companies that don't invest in education, please wave the flag and say they need to. Every employee at WISE has a learning budget. So you can literally use the money to attend courses, conferences, buy books, like whatever it needs to upskill you and take your learning to the next level. That's not only going to impact your direct role, but those around you as well. So definitely push for that. The investment in you as the employee is the best investment a business can make. The second piece around the question specifically, I would say that hasn't been mentioned, is around that cross-team collaboration. Especially if you work at larger organizations. Kind of back in the day, I was at a big, large enterprise, and it was very siloed, almost down to the function. So if you were in sales, you didn't speak to someone in engineering or product, and vice versa, etc. And I'll embarrass a few people. I've got 2 of WISE engineers right in front who came late. There they are. I sit right next to them in the office. Ashley's always telling me about the Android iOS thing that he's working on, and I'm like, okay, that sounds so interesting. Tell me more. And I'm learning as I'm communicating with other teams that I wouldn't ordinarily do in my day-to-day role. So even just within the teams that you're in, the organizations that you're in, there's so much learning you can do beyond the scope that necessarily your job description says.
I was just going to sort of pick up on the point around vulnerability. So I think it's really important for leaders at the organization to be really honest about what they know and what they don't know. And in my own case, so I run, AI and machine learning and data for Lloyds Banking Group. But literally everything I'm doing this year is quite different to what I had to do over the last 3 years, right? So, as everyone knows, this is the year of ChatGPT and generative AI. They weren't really things like even 12 months ago. And so I've had to really learn. I've had to spend hours reading, learning from super smart graduates that we've hired, going to conferences, but investing in that. And I think it's really important that we recognize that actually we're in this world that is incredibly volatile and uncertain, and it's called, things are changing. We're in these technology inflection points, and really it's nowadays it's less about what you know, it's more important about what you're able to learn. And so the starting point is for leaders to put their hand up and say, actually, I don't really understand this. I need to invest in myself. And I think that then gives permission to people in the teams to say, you know what, I'm going to invest as well. So that's part of it. What's also important is to ensure that you give people the space for learning. So, we all have, we've got to strike a balance between our work life and our personal life. So it's not fair to push all the learning on colleagues to themselves. We actually try and create time within the day. So we have a program called DEAL. It's Drop Everything and Learn, right? DEAL. And effectively it's a whole day where colleagues can just spend the whole day just learning, going through all of the learning pathways, or even just talking to other experts from other teams. So it's something that we've formalized. And then the third part, we haven't quite got there, but this is where we want to get to, is I think it's really important to incentivize learning as well. So absolutely, there's a benefit for everyone to learn, but organizations are trying to say that, but there's also a benefit for the organization. So where we'd like to get to is, a really structured program. We're still working this through, is where people have evidence they've acquired new skills and put them into practice, let's reward them for that, right? So let's actually give them a pay rise because they've acquired new skills that are relevant for them, but also relevant for the company. So those are the 3 things that we're trying to do to really kind of embed that in the culture.
I love where this conversation is going, how you've touched upon culture, the talent pipeline, building different and unique skill sets. I want to expand and ask you more on what are some proactive measures organizations can take to prepare for disruptive technologies and trends, so getting more to kind of the tech area. And maybe just so we're sensitive on time, maybe like a 1-minute concise answer.
Concisely, I would say just encouraging people to be curious and start to play with new technologies. Quick example, in the people space, I sat down with my team recently and said, look, how could we leverage ChatGPT? Let's pick some really repeatable processes and see if we can actually use ChatGPT as a member of our team. And funnily enough, we actually asked ChatGPT, what should we call you? We want to make you a member of our team. We called them Harper. But it was playful, it was experimental. It was like being curious about what's new, how can you integrate that into your workflows, into your operating model, into the way your teams work. So I think that curiosity, experimentation, I would say is a key mindset that people, that's useful in terms of being able to anticipate disruptive trends, technologies, that sort of thing.
I would say if future technology like an artificial intelligence seems overwhelming, I think you have to think about it as a co-pilot. It's a tool. The people that will do best with the things that are disruptive are not the people that handle the complicated, which I view as a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that has an answer, but they handle the complex. There may not be an answer, and they have to be comfortable with that uncertainty. And that usually takes soft skills like nuance and judgment and problem solving in a critical way. And with that mindset, there's nothing that will be disruptive. It'll only be accretive.
I'd probably echo Moktuno's response, like the experimentation piece. I think it's easy to get worried about some of the changing technologies and how it's going to impact our business, but like learn about it, embrace it, do the work to understand what impact it will have. I think once you assess it, and then it's easier to make a decision on, hey, do we actually take this on? Do we need to pivot? But until you actually embrace it, get familiar with it, and you don't have to be an expert by any means, but have a view, have an opinion that's educated, and hopefully with data, that sets you up for making better decisions.
My build is, I always say this to people, I don't think anyone is going to lose their job to AI, but you're probably going to lose your job to another human that knows how to use AI. So to Jay's point, basically that, people that know how to use these tools, they will succeed. So that's kind of the first thing I'd say. And the second point, and I'm not just saying this because I run data, right? So please, but data is going to be critical to every single role. And so in the same way, 30 years ago, there were people called typists, right? There were typing pools. I remember when I started work. Everyone does their own word processing now, right? It's just kind of normal. Data is going to be the same. So literally every job is going to require data literacy. So the one thing I'd encourage you to do is, I think to the points that the other panelists made, start to play around with new technologies, but in the same way that your parents or grandparents would have learnt how to type, embrace data and really try and find out as much as you can about it.
Okay, and so I'm going to transition. We don't have a whole lot of time. Maybe in the same kind of bullet point style round this next time. We're all here today because we're very activated and we're very concerned with this conversation on diversity. I would love to hear from you guys in terms of how can organizations embrace diversity and inclusion to be an element of future-proofing their culture and driving innovation. Why is that important?
For me at the moment, it would be around a lot of technology organizations they're very international. So for example, we've just built centers of excellence in Mexico, India, Kuala Lumpur. And one thing I'm really conscious of at the moment is what does diversity inclusion mean in an international context? So how do you make sure there's equality across different offices, different locations, to make sure you don't end up with a lack of equality between a HQ based in the US or UK and centers of excellence globally? I would say as well, what does diversity and inclusion mean in that international context in terms of the nuances of it? Because it's going to mean something very different to a UK employee compared to a Singaporean employee. The demographics, the protected characteristics you might try and focus on are very different. Finally, I would just say, for me, there's something critical I'm thinking about at the moment, which is the cut through within any international market from a diversity perspective, for me, is economic demographic. If you bring people from a sort of a lower socio-economic background into the workforce globally, I think you tackle lots of the diversity issues. But increasingly, I'm trying to figure out ways that I can look at a cut through across my international employees to make sure the diversity is being represented. And for me, I think it's that economic demographic that allows you to hit those targets and make sure you're bringing in the right thinking, the diverse perspectives you need in your business. So that would be my kind of take on that.
100% agree. Why? Commerce, collaboration, community. It's been proven for relevance, for innovation, for profit, diversity is critical. On the collaboration front, quite frankly, access to information is the key globally. We work in a company where we power the open internet precisely so that people can have subsidized access to information, not trapped behind walled gardens. That access to information creates opportunity and creates actual profits for companies. And community. We're sitting now here and look at this collection of talented growth mindset people that is a community that is Black Tech Fest, happens to be Black History Month here in the UK. Clearly I'm not from the UK, I'm from New York. But next month, there will be a community at Afrotech in Austin. Guess what? There's a global Black diaspora, so it matters not whether you're here, you're in Hackney or Brooklyn or Santo Domingo or Sao Paulo. We are tapping into that broader global community and making the world better for that. So that's the number one reason people should be investing in it.
I'll continue on the global theme. Like, Wise is a global company naturally. We move money around the world. And so for us, we want the people who work on that product to represent our customers as well. So we're proactive in saying, hey, if we're building for the African diaspora, we need to have representation there. For the Asian diaspora, we need to have representation there, and all of the constituent parts, like really being in the seat of the customer. And then one thing that's not added is just around like employee resource groups as well. Like saying like, hey, we have a community that we're actually going to invest in. We're going to sponsor events like this. We're going to actually encourage the community within an organization to get sponsorship from senior leaders and actually have a focus on those diverse groups. That's a real critical way of just making sure that it's front and center and it's not just something as a tick box or on a nice brochure, that actually from a senior leadership level, diversity is spoken about, it's invested in, and it's ultimately sponsored.
So look, just very quickly, conscious of time, but for Lloyds Banking Group, it's very much about much better outcomes, right? So diverse teams that represent the society we serve will lead and do lead to much better tech, data, product, all of the things that we're trying to do. We can only do those if our teams represent the population we serve. So that's kind of the main reason. It's a much better, it makes business sense. The second one is it's a great way to source talent. I mean, just looking around, I can see so many smart engineers and data scientists. Spoke to quite a few people this morning. So it's a great way to tap into some incredible talent when there is a war for talent. So those are the two reasons.
I love your responses, especially how you said diversity is not just of Western imperative, it's of global import. I'm also sensitive of time. Perhaps just before we all conclude today, maybe you could say what your name is, where you're from, and where people can find you.
So, Mactuno Suit, from WPP, Global People Director, and you can find me on LinkedIn or having a coffee in Stoke Newington.
I love it. Jay Grant, Chief Legal Officer at the Trade Desk. You can find me on LinkedIn. Anyone from the Trade Desk here? Can you raise your hand? Any one of those people know me. We had lunch yesterday, so they can find me. But look for me on LinkedIn. I'll look for you in the crowd, or you can also find me at a coffee shop, but it'll be in Manhattan. But happy to have coffee and come there do it with you.
I'm going to copy you, Jay. All the people at Wise, wave your hands. Maybe make some noise as well. There we go. Okay, one better. Foley Ogundelli. I'm the VP Commercial at Wise. You can find me in a coffee shop in Shoreditch and on LinkedIn.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ranil Batheja. I'm Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Lloyds Banking Group. So I'm on a mission to grow my team in the UK. So if you're interested even remotely in data or curious, or whether it's data engineering, data science, hit me up on LinkedIn. Look at our website. I post all the time about roles and jobs. So super keen to talk to anyone. Even if you're curious, even if you want to understand a bit more, hit me up and I'll gladly meet you for coffee and try and convince you to get into the data space, but also take up a role at Lloyds. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us today. This was a fabulous conversation. I noted some key things that were discussed. So it's the culture of learning in different pathways. We had comfort of uncertainty, experimenting with new technologies and innovative trends, comfort with new tools, and then a focus on your people, your culture, the technology you're using, community, but a very big emphasis on culture. So thank you all for joining us today, and this concludes our panel. We don't have time for Q&A, but feel free to approach any of us if you have any questions. Thank you, guys.